and welcome everyone to the Only Women Entrepreneurs podcast, also known as the O Podcast. I'm your host, Rosemary Cescolini, who became a successful entrepreneur by changing careers. I was a former high school teacher who taught English. I entered the world of manufacturing, and I mastered the art of making wood doors. In 3 decades, I created products and sold them nationwide to major retailers and professionals in the building industry. My career has been very fulfilling and rewarding, and I wanted to share my story and the story of many other women pursuing careers in alternative industries. Before I introduce my guest, I wanted to let you know that she reached out to me and wanted to speak on the show. At first glance, I wasn't sure if her tremendous work experience would fit the show's mission. My mission on this O podcast is to provide support, guidance, resources for young women to help them better select lifelong careers in manufacturing and construction that will assist them in achieving their full potential. However, I don't believe in prejudging anything until I had the opportunity to do some research. In doing so, I discovered that not only did she write 1 book, but she wrote 2 books. Jumpstart Your Career in Data Centers, followed up with a companion of her first book, Educator's Reference for Data Center Education. They really opened my eyes at the endless possibilities that exist in alternative careers for women. In her first book, one quote that really struck a chord with me, and that was, "Let there be no mistake that without trades, there are no data centers. We owe the trades everything. Without them, nothing would be built." And I agree wholeheartedly with this statement, and I knew that she would be a perfect guest for our show. And so without further ado, we are honored to have Carrie Goetz, located in the Sunshine State of Florida. She is the Principal and Chief Technology Officer, or CTO for short, of StrategITcom, a company founded on the premise that quality IT services should be accessible to all without exorbitant price tags. Carrie is a trailblazing woman with nearly 4 decades of experience in designing, running, and auditing data centers, IT departments, and intelligent buildings globally. Her extensive expertise, diverse certifications, and remarkable achievements make her a true industry leader in her field. Hello, Carrie, and thank you for taking the time to speak with our audience today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. Again, I'm so happy that I took the time to read your first book. Your second book is on order, and I will read it as soon as it comes in. I know they are available on Audible, but I prefer to have the actual paperback versions of them, and I like to share them as well. Just before we dig into your books, can you please provide some background information on data centers? And what I mean in simple layman terms, what is a data center? What's its purpose? And why has it been labeled as mission critical?
So a data center, every known documented thing on the planet lives in at least one data center, right? It might be a data center that's accessible to the internet. It might be a data center that's not. For instance, pharmaceuticals, some of that kind of stuff, they don't leave those internet accessible, but every single digitally documented thing on the planet lives in at least one data center, sometimes 2, because they're backed up, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how they're backed up. So when you think about that, that is a repository for everything that we see and touch in the digital world. It's everything we do on our phones. Even after you've deleted it off to your device, it still is in a data center. So Let there be no mistake, that stuff lives forever, for those of you listening that aren't real sure about that. But they are the buildings that support that entire infrastructure that makes everything go around. They definitely are, mission critical, because a lot of what we do depends on that data being alive and active and available. And certainly from government to healthcare, we have a lot more information out there in data centers probably than you actually realize.
Yeah, that's important. That made me realize that anything that you put out there in the internet, it stays forever. So be careful when you post something.
It is. It lives in infamy.
Okay, good to know. So let's talk about your first book that it's entitled Jumpstart Your Career in Data Centers. What was your motivation behind writing this book? And what did you ever think that in your professional background would lead you to actually put it together and put it out there for just the general public?
So this industry really sort of suffered a little bit in the beginning because there was a risk profile of people knowing where a data center was. So what happened was people started building all these data centers and hiding them. And then while they hit the data centers, they also hit all the careers that support the data centers or that build them and run them and sustain them. And so we kind of became this hidden industry. And it's really unfortunate, but a lot of kids, their first exposure to technology is a coding class. And coding is a very specific skill set. Not that it doesn't have a play in data centers, it certainly does. That's what, programmers make all the programs that we interact with every day. But that's just one small piece of the pie. And so if kids don't like coding, they just assume tech is not for them. And if you look at statistic wise, women have a very small part in technology, and we are 51% of the population. So that's not good. The women that leave tech, when I started writing the book, the attrition rate for women in tech was 67%, not that leave their job, that leave an entire industry. And I thought, that's really criminal because this industry is so vast and all of that experience is completely applicable if you change your job within the industry. But a lot of people don't know about the industry. They know about the little piece that they were taught. So for instance, if somebody makes UPS systems, for the data center industry, they know about that, but they don't know about coding maybe, or they don't know about the other pieces and parts. And the data center is an ecosystem. All of those pieces and parts fit together to make that work.
Right.
Sorry for the Freudian slip there.
That's okay.
But once all of those are put together, it is an ecosystem that runs, and it takes everything from construction all the way through those coders in the cloud. And I feel like if more people knew about those jobs, more people would apply for them. And right now we have over 300,000 open jobs that need to be filled within the next 2 years.
Now, is that just in America, or are you talking about worldwide?
No, that's a worldwide number for data centers, but that's also not counting the gray tsunami, which is all the people that are retiring out of the industry because nobody knows how long we're going to stick around. All us old geezers hanging around.
Oh, I know.
We're going to leave. Yeah. So it's definitely, there's a lot of promise there. I think that we don't do a good enough job incorporating trades. We don't do a good enough job reaching out to ex-military people because, there's such a demand in this industry for all of those. And so, I just wanted something that the goals for the book was under 200 pages, easily digestible in a weekend, that gave a good broad overview of the industry so people would know what it is, where the jobs are, how to go find for the jobs, and then, of course, add the resources for scholarships and all that other kind of good stuff.
Right. And that's true. In a weekend, you can easily read the book, and it's in simple terms. So very... I didn't have any issues following the terminology. And just going back to your comment about how little exposure we have, just back in my high school days, we had a grade 10 programming course where we introduced, just the bare minimum. And all I remember was that you'd have to be constantly updating yourself because the technology changed so fast. So I said, I don't think I really want to be always in school and learning, more information. I wanted something a little bit more static. But I didn't realize that there are tons of employment opportunities other than coding. And I think that's the biggest misinterpretation that we have right now in society.
Well, yeah, there's jobs for literally everything across the board. And here's my deal. So, I don't think I'm all for a college education. If that's in the cards for you, if that's something you want to do, by all means, pursue it. There's a million jobs that require a college degree. But when I started writing this book, 31% of the adult working age population had a college degree.
Right.
17% of them are doctors and lawyers. So that leaves 14% left that they're trying to fill every technical job with on the planet. And I think it's super lazy from an HR perspective because there's a million ways to learn. And I don't believe that you have to go to college for 4 years to be a worthwhile human being. I believe that you can go to a trade school, a vocational technical school. You can learn on the job, and your knowledge is every bit as important as that knowledge that was received 4 years in a college program. Now, that said, there's a lot of people that don't know what they want to do with life, right?
Absolutely.
Over a third of all people that graduate college don't even work where they got their degree. They work something completely different. So what if we viewed this a little bit differently? And what if we viewed the industry as, look at all these on-ramps to the industry. We can get involved in the trades. We can get involved in construction. We can get involved in project management, in procurement, in accounting, in all these different ways. And then you can look around and figure out all the jobs around you, kind of sort out what you want to do. And most of these companies will pay for your college. So then you have a job that you're working at. You can go back to school, get your degree, and have zero college debt. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't we consider that? And
That's
the
amazing.
trades are so important. You know, I can't tell you the number of times that I've walked in a data center with somebody that's never been in one, and they look at the artistry and the craftsmanship, and they're just absolutely gobsmacked. Like the piping is all run just pristine, and the cable plant's dressed in. And there's a pride and an artistry in that craftsmanship that the guys, you know, they're usually out of the data center before people walk in and are gobsmacked. But, you know, I think we have to meet people where they want to work and just really celebrate everybody's accomplishments.
Absolutely. I'm just going to take you back with respect to the actual data center. Okay, if I didn't read your book, I would not have understood exactly what it was. So from the procurement of land and the building and all the nuts and bolts that go into it, would you mind just giving us an overview of basically how to put together this data center and what type of jobs that could be available in alternative careers for women?
So if we start out with site selection, that's a big real estate play, certainly a commercial real estate play. There's differences in power availability, communications being fiber to the site, all of that kind of stuff. It's a very specialized real estate career, but certainly one out there. Right. And then once the site is selected, and you look at different things, you look at certainly power, communications. If they're not there, they can get there. It's just going to cost more, obviously. Climate is a big part of that, latency to wherever your customers are going to be. So all of that comes into play. And then if the fiber's not there and the power's not there, then here come the linemen, here come the people running fiber. There's a lot of female-owned fiber companies. And right now, as we have all of this infrastructure planning, putting all this fiber in the ground, there's tons of jobs there, tons. And actually some very successful women that have made careers out of that inside and outside the data center. And then it's standing up a big commercial building. So any and every trade you can imagine, from plumbers, pipe fitters, welders, machinists, carpenters, masons, sheetrock hangers, painters, all of those things are all getting it in. And then once it's in, it's a changing environment. So that stuff's not static. It moves, it changes. And, you know, some of those are purpose built. They have a single tenant, but that tenant's going to move his own stuff too. And then once you're inside, you have people that put in the raised floor, if there's a raised floor, the cabinets, rack and stack the equipment, add all the cable plant, keep all of that running, keep the networks going, understand how the networks work, put the servers in place to house all the applications, put the storage in place to house all the data, make all of that work, and then keep the ecosystem going, capacity planning. And then, of course, people have to procure that stuff. And for everything that goes in that data center, there's somebody that sells that stuff. Right. There's a marketing department. There's conferences that people go to. So the jobs are really, really vast.
You know, and going back to my high school days and probably even today with young women in middle school, high school, they don't know any of this information. And it seems that the possibilities are infinite. Some people that are very good at maybe sales, there's a position there. If I'm a creative artist and I want to work somehow creating with my hands and figuring things out, there would be a position for me, which is very encouraging. One thing, though, that does determine whether or not people actually would pursue a career is if they're well compensated. And that's what I wanted to discuss. Like, what are the average salaries for trades that come in and do the HVAC or the plumbing or the cooling systems?
So it totally depends on what trade you go into. Sure. And it's also going to depend a little bit on what part of the country you're in and whether you're a union shop or not. But most of those jobs are, you know, 65, 85,000 a year and better, depending on what you're doing and where you're going. And then, of course, you have all the perks and the benefits on top of that. Right now in New York, if you go through an electrical apprenticeship, when you get out, you're making $150,000 a year and zero college debt.
That's amazing.
So, you know, and to be fair, my generation my parents started it. My generation probably perfected it, pushing kids into college. And, you know, because that's where the good paying jobs were. It's completely the opposite now because nobody wants to work with their hands anymore. So the people that can work with their hands make excellent money.
Yes.
And there's a push too with veterans coming out of the military. And one of the things that the data center operators all tell the military, you guys are really good at thinking fast on your feet. You're good at handling conflict. Those are all things that make you great in the industry, which is true for that part of the industry. But there's a huge part of the industry if people are done with the chaos and they want out of the chaos.
Sure.
That again brings in a lot of those other jobs where it's an 8 to 5. You can have that work-life balance. You have time at home with your family. You can do whatever you want. And there's another contingent of these jobs where I've got 4 million miles under my belt with one airline going all over the globe doing jobs. So if you want to see the world, you can absolutely do that in this industry too.
That would sell me on it for sure. And just touching back on your point about, my generation, same thing. My parents were immigrants, and they were basically working poor. They came to the country in the late 50s, and they only had a grade 5 education. So they started with whatever job they had, but they learned skills. And by acquiring skills, moving up, my father in particular in the construction industry, it got to the point where we were a poor working class, and they ended up being in an upper middle class. So, the job security and the higher wages would definitely elevate people in their social status. Do you agree or not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the American dream, right? And that totally brings my point home, is that you do not have to have a college degree to make good money. Not everybody wants to be a bazillionaire, right? Some people are perfectly content living right where they are, going hunting on the weekends or fishing or doing whatever it is they enjoy. And that's what they want in life. And I think we have to meet people where they want to work and the types of jobs they want to work in. And not all of that involves a college. And how bad are we as a society that we have determined that our worth is nothing unless we spent 4 years under a college's roof? I mean, who are they to tell us what we're worth? Your parents are a great example.
Yes.
They learned a skill, they learned a trade, they worked their way up. And that possibility exists for literally anybody.
I know. And I always say, without people like my dad, I wouldn't have the roads to drive on, the sidewalks to walk on, or the subdivisions to live. So these are essential services. And like you said, with a lot of people retiring or they're no longer with us, the shortage is getting actually critical each year as it goes by. And it's very worrisome, where we're not going to progress as a society because things can't be made. And, data centers is one of the things, and it's very important because I don't know, this generation, they rely on technology. Imagine if your technology is not working, your iPhone or whatever gadget that you're, relying on these days. It's devastating.
For sure. I mean, and even the jobs that are so non-technical still have a technical component.
Right.
Even that one island of people that nobody can go see, because once you land on the island, you don't leave because they're cannibals, apparently. And so people just watch them afar, and they have no technology, no anything. But everything we know about those people lives in a data center.
That's right.
So they're documented somewhere, right?
Yeah, correct. I want to touch on your second book, Educator's Reference for Data Center Education. And this was a companion to your first book, and it's specifically designed for teachers. So what made you want to write this book, and what impact has this book had so far in the education system?
Well, it just came out, so I don't know.
Okay, so it's fresh.
But there is little to no data center curriculum. I'm part of Infrastructure Masons. We have some capstone projects to reach out to those in engineering schools and things like that, to introduce the idea of data centers. There's a couple programs that are data center related, but for the most part, there's literally no education. And so I wanted something that would be easier for teachers to be able to add to other things that they're doing in the classroom. So great example, a friend of mine in Minnesota wanted to go read about data centers or talk about data centers to the second grade class. And the teacher said, absolutely not. It's not in our curriculum. We can't let you do that. Now, they did let her read a book about farts to the kids.
No
so
way.
Yeah, because it was, I don't know, somehow on the approved reading list, but there was nothing, so she could talk to him about data centers, which are good career options, right? At 6 and 7, it's a great time to start introducing these concepts. And so I do have a children's book coming out too here in a couple months.
Oh, I can't wait to see it then.
But the point was, the education isn't there. And so teachers that are teaching coding academies, boys and Girl Scouts that have technical merit badges, the trade schools, vocational technical education centers, these jobs literally touch all of those. And I thought, if we could come up with a shortcut where maybe a teacher could add this as an add-on to their curriculum and then add it to a coding class, add it to a carpentry or a welding class or something, these are the data centers, these are where the jobs are. When I was lecturing to a bunch of students, one of the electrical instructors came up to me and said, the problem with trying to get my students in data centers is that you guys have terminology they're afraid of because they've never heard it before. And I said, well, let's just make sure they've heard of it before then, because they do the same function. Electricity is electricity. A breaker is a breaker, whether you call it something else or it's still a breaker. I mean,
exactly.
It breaks the current, right? It does the same thing. And so by doing the educator's guide, I thought maybe it would be easier for teachers to be able to know what the takeaways are from the chapter, because it's hard to teach something if you don't know what it is, right? Just like you didn't know what a data center was. It'd be hard for you to go teach that. But if you had a reference that said, these are the key takeaways out of each chapter, these are some exercises you can do with the class, these are some experiments, these are some things we're trying to do, all the way down, I've got it, to building a human data center so that there's different people in the class that have the functions of the different parts of a data center. And then you pass a packet around so you can see how the thing works.
Right.
So all of those are things that are pretty easy for teachers to add and incorporate into their curriculum, but it introduces the idea of data centers. So when kids get out of school, they're not like, what the heck was this?
Okay. That all makes sense. So as a former high school teacher, and now I'm offering career and business coaching, what strategies can I apply now to my clients to help them consider an alternative career in data centers? Maybe one or two pieces of advice that I could use.
Think probably the biggest one is just the realization that those careers are out there. So if you find whatever they're passionate with, there is something in the data center community, there's a job that will suit them, whether it's sales, if it's operations, project management, any of those kind of things. Military spouses do really well, and a lot of these jobs are remote. So that works very well to other people. But I think you have to realize that even though this is a technical field-ish, it is not as technical in some jobs as others. So you can meet where you want to meet technology-wise. You don't have to be a lifelong learner, although to me, that was the draw for technology. But, everybody's different.
Right.
And then I would say the other thing is just start talking to people. Look at some of the industry AFCOM, 7x24 exchange. A lot of those have local chapters where you can go meet and greet and talk to other people in the industry, find out what their days are like, what they're doing, open yourself up to those other employment opportunities. And then I would say, lastly, and probably the most important, I'm a firm believer that no woman should ever rely on anybody for a paycheck. I just believe that you get in bad situations you can't get out of. And so all of these jobs are out there. There's a million places you can learn for free. Find a mentor, look on LinkedIn, look online. I mentor a lot of young women. Don't be afraid to ask. Seriously, there's so many opportunities. And right now, there's so many companies that are really trying to hit gender parity, or at least get somewhere remotely close, that women are very, very sought after in this industry. So find your passion, and then we can find a place for you. And if you don't know where to look, reach out. I'd be happy to help you.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's fantastic advice. And I look forward to promoting those options. So the possibilities in alternative careers, are we just focusing on young women who are in high school that haven't made a selection right now and they're young in life? And the reason why I'm asking this question is, when I left the teaching profession, I had a Bachelor of Education. So I'm thinking, a person like myself, what kind of career would be open for me at, say, I've been teaching, say, 10 years or so, or 15, and not liking it. I want to try something else. Well, what would I do?
So for teaching, I would say the first thing is every technical company has trainers. They train new employees, they train their customers, they train. So if you like teaching, if that's kind of in your blood, those are really, really good options. I would say that a lot of the trade shows, booth duties, marketing departments, there's a technical aspect to marketing. If you like technical marketing, if you like none of that, you like the artsy side of marketing, you could certainly work there too. But the thing is just to figure out what you really enjoy. If, like I said, if teaching was your passion, every company has trainers. They all do. Plus, there's a whole bunch of certification programs, and there's companies that do that. IDCA, CNET, which is now part of Uptime Institute, and EPI, all have certification and training classes, because that's how everybody learns. You could have a PhD in IT, and if you don't know about data centers, they're still going to send you to a certification class. And so all of those have to be taught, and those certifications are super rewarding. You can take a single mom and put her through a certification class, and it's a life-changing experience for her, right? So now she has the ability to feed her family, to do things. There's scholarships for a lot of that education. So, I mean, it can change a woman's life on a dime, or a man, or anybody else. And it doesn't really matter where you are in your career to do that. People change for a lot of different reasons. They're fed up with the school system. They're fed up. I know a lot of teachers, actually, that seems to be
so they might be listening, and
they might be listening.
An alternative career here.
But absolutely, there's some place for you. And the cool thing about it is, once you're in the industry, you see all of the other careers around you. You can float around in this industry until your heart's content, and find exactly what really excites you.
Right. And the reason why I asked that question is, I'm finding on a personal basis a lot of women that are perhaps in their 40s. They started off with the career thinking that would be the career until retirement. They're totally unsatisfied, and they want an exit strategy. So I just wanted to provide some alternatives for them. And you also have to consider what you said earlier. A lot of women, they need, everyone needs economic independence. And sometimes, they might be suffering from a nasty divorce, or they may have been stay-at-home moms, and they need that economic security in order to be able to start fresh in a career. And it sounds like this industry would provide that opportunity.
Oh, yeah. And the cool thing about it is the jobs are everywhere. We have made sort of major data center cities. There's about 12 of them around the U.S. We have more data centers in the U.S. than anywhere in the world. Although the other countries are starting to catch up. But the point is that the data centers are everywhere. And we have the big major data centers. Every company has a data center, sometimes in their corporate office building, which could be next door to you. There's edge data centers that handle traffic closer to home, that are sitting under cell towers. So the jobs are literally everywhere. It's not just in one spot. Plus, there's a whole remote work component too.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you have an extensive experience in designing these data centers and IT departments. How do you see the landscape of these centers evolving in the face of rapid technological advancements?
I would say that there's kind of a little push and shove there. So there have been some headlines where some of the large hyperscalers have laid some folks off lately, large numbers of people.
Right.
Not in their data centers, however.
Okay, that's good to clarify.
Most of those are elsewhere in the company. Yeah. So the jobs are definitely there. The jobs are going to last forever. Again, it's just a matter of figuring out kind of where you want to slide into that puzzle,
Yeah, and I'm glad you actually differentiated between the two, because those are the things that make the headlines. But what you're telling me on this podcast, that if you select wisely, then you've got job security, which is important to get out there.
Yeah. So like Meta had a whole bunch of layoffs. A lot of that was out of their metaverse that didn't go as well as I thought it would. So, sometimes in tech, it's a little trial and error. And I think now we're seeing a little pushback now that we see some of the problems with youth, especially with social media and the problems that it's causing. People are trying to, divorce their technology. I tell everybody when I'm speaking and all of my mentees, what you need to do when you pick up your phone, if you see something negative, whether you agree with it or not, if it's a negative statement, turn your phone upside down for 10 minutes. And if you do that for a couple of weeks, you'll realize how much negativity is on there. Yes. And you also help yourself divorce from that negativity a little bit. But it is, it's very intentional, the addictive behavior, and they know that addictive behavior is there, and yet they perpetuate it. So, while there's good in technology, there's also things in technology we need to be much more aware of. And I think too that really screams for diversity in this industry, because, to me, I view diversity as fingerprints. I don't view it as anything outward appearance. I think that's pretty
Right.
racist, actually. I view diversity as fingerprints, right? Because everybody has a very different need for what they need out of technology, what they need. Take three of your closest friends, all of you will do something different on the internet that day. And the only way to make sure that it stays fair and open for all of us is to make sure that we all work in this industry so that we can assure that from the inside out. It's not going to be a government watchdog that makes it happen. It's going to be employees and people on the ground that stay involved that make sure that these are happy places. 2.2 million children were trafficked using technology last year.
That's awful.
That's an abysmal number. And the only way that we're going to fix that is to make sure that the people within these companies have an agenda to make sure that the companies are taking care of the people whose data it's housing and whose data is a currency for them. I don't think people realize when you use these social media platforms, you become their currency. They sell your habits, your browsing history, whether it's anomalized or not, they still know who you are. I was on a panel in England a few years back with a distinguished fellow from Microsoft, and we were talking about big data and how you can farm it. And they bought 10,000 a company, I don't think it was Microsoft, but a company bought 10,000 anomalized records and matched it up with Facebook likes and hit 90.99 over 99% accuracy on who the people were.
That's really alarming.
As you use this, and people say, my son-in-law said, well, I don't really care about privacy. I gave it up for my convenience. But you do care about your privacy when you start realizing that data can come back and bite you, and it makes it easier for people to steal your identity and do those things that causes problems in life. And so I think we need to be careful how we are that currency. And again, back to that negative thing, it knows by what you like, how you vote. It knows by what you like, what your, preferences are, all of these things. And they match that with zip codes, and they can tell all kinds of information, which is fine to an extent. But I think, especially if you have children on the platform, you need to be really, really careful what's going on out there.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I am careful on social media, but one thing that really concerns me, and I'm just going to ask, is when there's a security breach. You might be a victim, a bank, your customer at a bank, or
several times actually. Yeah, travel a while. That happens really fast.
Medical center, your records, and that's frightening. You get this letter, and you say, "Oh, we had a data breach, and your information is out there," and you're like, "Oh, great." And all these things run through your mind. And so how do you protect yourself against that?
Well, you should freeze all of your credit reports, keep them that way unless you're applying for credit. That's a good one. Make sure you have multi-factor authentication turned on every and anything that has financial information or information that could lead anybody to your financial situations.
Okay.
And then, I think most of us pay for identity theft protection. And I think it's, it's even rolled into some people's homeowners now, depending on who your carrier is. But you just have to be careful what you leave out there, and make sure that you're using different passwords for every site, and that you're using password minders, to remember your passwords so that they all change. So if somebody does gain access, it's only to a smidge, it's not to everything. And you just have to be careful what you do out there.
That's great advice.
It's a great and scary world.
Oh, for sure. Exactly. But you know what? You have to put out the good stuff, and then kind of cut back on the negative and the bad stuff. And that's why we're here today, right? We want to spread some good stuff and let people know about all the advantages of a career. And I wanted to
just think about this. Don't you think that the internet would be a kinder place if there really were half and half men and women in there of all walks of life?
I agree. Yeah, I do. I do. I agree. And I think we'll talk about that on another podcast. We can spend a whole hour on that.
Right.
I wanted to mention about your certifications. You have over 40 of them. And one of them struck out, and it's Master Infrastructure Mason. Never heard of that.
Infrastructure Masons, I don't know that they still have that master designation anymore, but they did originally. But Infrastructure Masons is all the people that build this digital age. Their motto is connect, grow, and give back. I hosted their podcast for a while too, but it's all the movers and shakers of the industry, and it's a great way to network and meet people. But they also do things like there's a climate pledge, there's a diversity pledge to try to get gender parity in the industry. There's some other things that they're pretty active in, but there's a lot of industry organizations. They're all exceptional.
That's great. Okay, so one thing that leads to success in career selection is how passionate you are about it. So can you describe how passionate you are about your career and how you've been, able to stay 4 decades? I'll have to hear your advice on that.
Yeah. For me, the big turn on about technology is that it always changes, and it's not my first degree. My first degree was in architecture, but it always changes. It always grows. There's a chance to learn new things all the time. So for me, that's my passion, which is also part of the reason I have so many certifications. I was a consultant for a long time, and a lot of times you had to have a certification to bid on a certain project. So I have a lot of certifications. A lot of those certifications are from companies that don't even exist anymore. So if you go back through the hierarchy, they were great at a time. But they are, that's how most people demonstrate knowledge in this industry, is through a certification. It's either, professional engineer certification, or there's a certification in some other part of the industry. It's just a way to grow knowledge that is outside of a college curriculum, but absolutely valued and important.
Yeah, when you think of mason, I think of a bricklayer. So it's
I know that totally confused a lot of people. Yeah.
So
that happens a lot. One. It was probably I did not name the organization, but there is a lot.
You're just a recipient. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So, as a fractional CTO or chief technology officer to several companies, I believe, could you share some insights on the challenges and opportunities faced by businesses in leveraging technology effectively?
So I get involved in a lot of the strategic conversations. Do I want to go to the cloud? Do I want to build my own stuff? What do I need to, do this project? What's procurement exercise? How do I evaluate 20 different things to figure out what I want? So it really depends on the company, where they are in the stage of what they're doing and where they want to go. How much, that's the benefit of a fractional CTO, right? You can have somebody come in and set you up for the next 5 or 6 years without putting them on the payroll, and then handle that with management and bring them back in just on an as needed basis. Right. So it really is kind of it levels the playing field for people that need a chief technology officer, but not full time, or they're not quite there yet, or they're just starting out. And so, it depends on the company. I get involved in a lot of really cool things, from sustainability and carbon capture, believe it or not, for data center power, all the way through, the cloud and cloud stacks and repatriating and figuring out what's the most cost effective. And I will say right now, I think when the cloud first came out, there was a big push for a lot of people to move to the cloud. And there's a lot of companies that have realized that cloud spend is a little carried away. And so they're bringing some of that back and changing. But technology changes. What you used 5 years ago in your company is not necessarily what you're going to use tomorrow. And one of the things that small companies really struggle with is evaluating technology if they don't have technical people on staff. And that's where I come in and sort of break it down in layman's terms and help them understand kind of what the implications are for each thing and help them make those selections.
That's wonderful. Your commitment in supporting STEM, for those that don't know STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, is really inspiring. So how important do you think it is for young women to participate in STEM careers?
I think it's absolutely critical. To me, it's a shame that it's not introduced at a much younger age in school. And we've taken a lot of the shop classes out of school, and women love that too. I mean, that's not just it's not just a male thing. As many women like that as men. So I think, it is a good thing that we are starting to do some introduction with technical merit badges and stuff like that in scouting. But I do think that in junior high and high school, all of these should be on the table. They should be in all of the career classes. They should, people should be talking about, because that's really where we're going. I mean, this is the digital age, and the most, I would say, probably productive degrees that you can get would be in science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, that's not to say that if you don't have a degree in one of those that you can't participate in the industry. You certainly can. But, I think that if we need to teach kids how to be better at technology. Right. You know what I mean? So for instance, kids can use technology all day long. Now, if you told your kids to keep a digital diary and figure out what their carbon footprint was from the 787 Snapchats they sent that day, they're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I do that exercise with students all the time, and they're blown away with the amount of power. And the way that we can make people become better citizens and better users of technology certainly is to make sure that they have exposure to technology at a much, much younger age.
Right, right. Yeah, one of the things that I did find, like I was also an historian, and going back to the world wars when, men were called to go fight overseas, and a lot of women had to take on male roles in manufacturing and heavy industry, and they were making artillery and weapons. And then when the wars were over, they had to go back to their normal home life as a homemaker. And they started stereotyping, saying, women can't handle, they don't have the cognitive ability to handle math and science skills. So, it's best that they stay home and take care of the family. So we still have those stereotypes today. And it makes young girls going through elementary school feel like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm a girl. I just can't enter, math or science in my head. So they kind of like quickly have that negativity, and they just give up.
Well, I think it's a much different world than it was 15 or 20 years ago, because there's so many more women in technology and women working in technology. There are a lot of us that have really worked our whole career to make sure it's better for the next generation coming behind us. And so I would encourage people that if you think that it's that way, come back because it's not that way anymore. And I do think that we need to do a better job of putting a lot of these careers in front of young people, period, right. Young boys and girls, but certainly young women, because we are underrepresented here. But, I think even Hollywood's doing a better job of highlighting some of the technical women. Look at the one they did about the women that made Apollo actually go up in the air. That was women that did all that math. That wasn't men.
That was
and
impressive.
Women are good at all of those things. And I would say, you still have some people that probably don't share that opinion,
right.
But you also have a lot of people that have really embraced this from a STEM perspective. And from the lectures that I do about women in the industry and trying to bring more kids in the industry, a lot of the most active participants in many, many cases are dads of daughters, because they want their daughters in a different career and they want to see it differently. So I think a lot of those stereotypes and a lot of that stuff is definitely breaking down. It's definitely changing, but we still have work to do.
We have work to do. I agree. That's fantastic. So throughout your career, have you experienced any professional challenges explicitly because you were women in tech? Like, say, let's go back to the early years and we'll go through your 40-year history. You have any examples?
So, well, I say that to say this. I personally think that if you play the chick card, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Right.
And I say that because, and I'm going to quote Terry Bradshaw, this is my favorite expression, you have to be able to do some mirror economics. You have to figure out what your role was in the situation, if it really was because you're a woman, or if you just assume it's because you're a woman.
Right.
Maybe you read the situation wrong, because that's where you get your own personal growth. Now, if you've gone through all of that and you realize that, yeah, it definitely is because I'm a woman and this guy is, or this usually guy is, there's something else at play, then I think you need to deal with that situation. But yes, it's absolutely happened to me. I had every woman's got stories, and it doesn't really do much good to bring them back up. But yes, there's absolutely been times that something happened. It's even other things like being excluded from something because you're the only woman on the team and the other guys' wives might get jealous. I feel like that's really lazy from a company perspective, because you should be able to pick out an activity where that doesn't happen. And you should have people in your employ that you don't have to worry about that. Other people's personal lives shouldn't come into, destroying somebody else's career because somebody has a jealous wife.
Yeah, there's no place for
those
that.
kind of things. Yeah, it's like, just grow up, be adults. But I mean, people are people, right? There's good and bad in every race, creed, color, every walk of life, every country, everywhere. There's good and bad. And I think what we need to do, rather than focus on whether something happened bad because somebody was a woman, is to really empower women to say, look, that's a good situation, that's a bad situation, but you can change that situation.
Right.
And that, I think, is where the real strength comes in. If you're in one of those situations and you truly feel that something bad is happening to you and you truly believe that it is because you're a woman or you're a whatever,
right,
get out, go find a different situation. But don't cheat yourself out of the mirror economics to make sure that you couldn't have handled that differently, that you had no role to play in that, because that's how we grow. We all say stupid things. We all do stupid things. Nobody's impervious to that. And
absolutely.
so you have to really be able to look at that and go, that wasn't my best day. Could have done a little better there. Could have done a little better. I'll do better tomorrow. Be gracious when you do. Give other people grace. And realize, sometimes it's not just, it might have come across as a sexist remark, but maybe that wasn't the intent. Maybe if you said, wow, that was kind of sexist there, you would get huge apologies. So I think we have to give grace as well as give ourselves grace, and make sure that we just address each situation on its own merit. And then we can figure out if it's a pattern of behavior, but just let the situation go. I mean, all you do is really wreck your own health if you stay pissed off anyway.
That's true. That's true. So your company, StrategITcom, has a charter of promoting gender and diverse equality, which is truly impressive. So what strategies have you found effective in creating a balanced and inclusive work environment in your own business?
So I started right before COVID, and COVID made it very, very difficult to do a lot of things because everything was changing at the same time. I took a very different approach in that I started partnering with other female-owned companies, so we all support each other. If I need somebody in cybersecurity, I've got somebody that I could call. If I need somebody that has better expertise in getting all the pieces and parts on a site, I can call somebody there. And so it really has worked out well in that we have this network of female-owned companies, and we all lift each other up and we refer business to each other, and it's worked out very well. And I didn't have to add headcount during COVID. And now that, I'm working on really more technical writing and being very purposeful about the types of projects that I take, it's worked really well. So
fabulous. So Analytics Insight recognized you as one of the top 10 most influential women in technology in 2020. So congratulations on earning this title. So how do you see your influence impacting women pursuing careers in technology and entrepreneurship?
I really try to just be out there so people can see themselves in somebody else that's in the industry. And I have a huge network. We've created a massive network where women have networked other women and other men and other veterans and all kinds of people in, so that we can have other people to bounce ideas off of and rely on. But I do think it's just really being out there and being available. I can't tell you how many people I've mentored throughout my career. And I think that's what you do. I think you just be the best that you can, extend a hand backwards while you're reaching forward, and we just pull each other along.
Yeah, you mentioned mentorship a few times, so your involvement as a mentor in this industry is truly commendable. Could you share perhaps a memorable experience where mentorship played a pivotal role in someone's personal growth?
Oh, I mean, I think there's tons of those. If you mentor anybody, that's the most rewarding part, right? It's really having that positive impact in their life and being able to make a difference. Sometimes it's been, I've got a great friend in Venezuela. Well, he used to be, that I mentored for a while, and the conditions down there got really bad, and we were able to find him something with a very great company in another country so he could move his family to a safer place. Those kind of things, that just is amazing. Or somebody says, hey, I couldn't have gotten this raise, or I couldn't have gotten this job without you helping me. All of those are super rewarding. To me, it's really about all of us and kind of lifting each other up together. And then, those people go forward and do it to other, do it with other people, mentor other people.
Yeah, Yeah,
make,
that's fantastic. You create mentors because they've received the positive mentorship, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I mean,
it's
it's
very
a two-way
needed.
street. So if you're in a mentoring relationship and you're a mentee, don't expect your mentor to be a mind reader. You have to be open about what you want, what your goals are, and what your expectations. And you also, I think, on both sides of that equation too, need to realize that it's a very iterative process. We've all started down, we've all had buyer's remorse.
Yeah, I
It
have to
seems
agree
so
on that.
good at the time, right? So, it's
afterthought.
going to be iterative. It's going to change, but, you have to keep the communication going, because that's really where the success in any relationship like that works, is just that communication.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, considering your expertise, what advice would you give to aspiring female entrepreneurs who are looking to integrate technology into their business strategies?
Oh, so I do a lot of this, actually. The first thing I would say is, don't rely on what your friends have bought, because they might be just as ignorant as you are. Spend an extra 150, 250 bucks, 300 bucks, whatever it is, to go buy a little bit of somebody's time that can help you figure that out. If you're completely lost and you don't know what the stacks do and how to get there, hire somebody to help you. There are a lot of gigs like Fiverr and Upscale and all, different websites that you can get different people. Check their references. Don't just assume because they have them that they're good.
Right.
I've had lots of times in bidding situations, people give references, and you call the references, they have literally nothing nice to say. So check those references and make sure they're A, legit, and B, they really still have good things to say, because relationships change over time. But I would say this: if it is a system that you're going to be using throughout the life cycle of your business, take the time to make sure you get the right system. If it's something that you're going to be using for a little bit, it's not going to have a major impact on your business, like an antivirus for your desktop, maybe, you can go buy reviews and stuff. But if it's something that's going to be integral to your business, your accounting system, for instance, would be a good one. Make sure you understand the ins and outs, because you can't always go from one system to the next, especially with cloud applications. You are a lot of times landlocked in a single application. Make sure you understand. If you don't understand the in and outs, hire somebody that can help you. It'll be the best few $100 you ever spent, and it'll save you thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands down the road.
That's terrific advice. And you know what? You can apply it to almost any business. Do your homework.
Right. But certainly your systems, there's nothing worse than, and I've seen this happen to too many companies, especially in accounting systems, where somebody gets all in on a cloud-based accounting system, and then they need to upgrade because something has changed in their business, and that upgrade is not available or it can't be ported. And then you're really just starting over with a new system, and you lose all your history, and you lose a lot of, there's reporting packages that you can marry those back together, but it's not pretty and it's painful. So,
and
for
very
those
costly,
core
probably.
systems, do your due diligence up front, for sure.
Yeah. So O aims to equip female entrepreneurs with necessary tools and of success. Could you share an example of a tool or skill that you believe is especially crucial for women navigating in the business world?
Oh, there's a lot. I would say on a personal level or a professional level?
Why don't you give me one of each?
On a personal level, do a better job of promoting yourself. I suck at that. I absolutely hate, deplore, detest self-promotion. I don't like being the center of attention, which makes it really hard when you're trying to sell a book. You have to get over yourself. I do a ton of public speaking. I can talk about other stuff all day long, but talking about myself, I'm very, very uncomfortable. But in order to excel in business, you have to keep that diary of all the things that you did good. And I tell everybody to do this, and it actually works on both sides. So we'll do this one. Start out with an attaboy diary. Write down every time something went particularly good in your life, something went particularly good in your job, what you did that you were proud of, and keep this as an ongoing diary, either digital or as a journal, however you want to do it that works for you. And the reason that you do this is, one, if you're having a really garbage day and you're thinking, what am I doing? What have I done to myself? You can go back and read those, and it helps you out, right? It makes you realize, look, I overcame those hurdles, are good. The next thing is, if you're trying to get a job or you're trying to build out that portfolio and show all the good things you've done, 5 years from now, it's going to be hard. It's going to be real hard. When you get money, you get back 5 years, it's really, really hard. So So that helps you have that reminder. And then also, if you are in a job and you're working on getting a promotion or raising yourself up the ladder, you want to be able to go to the boss and say, I deserve a raise because.
Right.
And all of those are things that you need to know. So I would say do that journal always. The other thing is know your worth. And you can do that by figuring out what other people in your job are making. If you're trying to do something, if you're solving a very unique problem, don't think that you have to be the cheapest out there to make that work. Most people appreciate value if they see the value. If you can articulate the value, charge for the value. If you want to go out there and sell commodity stuff, you can certainly do that. You will be in the commodity business with everybody else. And it's a huge competition. Go look up soccer balls on Amazon. Great example. There's hundreds of thousands of them, right? So how do you know to pick one soccer ball? You don't.
No.
So understand your value. And then I would say the other thing is build the ability to call BS on other people.
Okay.
And as a business entrepreneur, the best thing you can do for yourself is call BS on everybody that comes in the door. Now, you don't have to be ugly about it. But what happens as a manufacturer, as a company, most people that provide stuff for you, they follow that 80-20 rule, right? Here, we're going to give you this advice. It works for 80% of our customers. And so we've done a good thing. We've done something. We've been helpful. You might be in that 20%, right? So make sure that you understand exactly what you're going for and be able to articulate that. You're going to need to do that in an RFP. You're going to be able to do that in job hunts. You're going to be able to do that when you're hiring people. Make sure that you can articulate that end result and exactly what you want, and that'll help. And then have that air of skepticism. Make sure you understand, are you in that 80 or 20? Or, here's all these cost savings they've put out on the line for you, but 80% of those don't apply to you. So are they a cost savings, or is that just more numbers for you to look at to make them sound good? So you have to really break those things down and figure out where it's applicable to you. And then you can figure out the better things.
Right. I appreciate that advice. I'm actually used it in my own company too. So I agree.
Great minds think alike.
They do. They do. So are there any examples or resources that women can leverage in order to strengthen their prospects of joining tech industries?
Absolutely. There is right now, today, every single person that's listening to this can go out and Google MOOCs, M like in Mary, OOC, massive open online classes. They are the same classes that are taught in college. They are free to everybody. You can take those at your own pace. You audit those classes. The only thing is you don't pay for them, so you don't get credit for them, but it's the same classes as taught in college. There's clearly the internet out there, which is a wealth of information, good, bad, true, and otherwise. Back to that BS comment, right? You have to be able to weed out what's true and what's not.
Of course.
But just invest in yourself. I mean, there's over the years, you will lose things, you will buy things, people get divorced, they lose everything, houses burn down, natural disasters happen. The one thing that nobody can ever, ever, ever take away from you is an investment you make in yourself. And you can overcome all of that other stuff if you've invested in yourself.
Right. Earlier on in the interview, we spoke about the importance of diversity and promoting it in the data center industry. So why do you think it's important to have a higher representation of women in this industry?
Well, because we're half the population. So let's just start there. If it's going to support us and tech is going to work for us, as opposed to us being a slave to tech, then we have to have a voice in tech, and we have to make sure that the systems support us. Plus, back to the point earlier, I believe that when we have more women in tech, it will be a kinder place for everybody. We have to make sure that our systems support all of the fingerprints that use our systems, not people of, any one demographic or any one color, any one whatever. Everybody has a different need. And the only way that we're going to really make tech work for us as a whole and not be a platform to censor, control information, all of that kind of stuff, is if we all work from the inside out. It stops groupthink. It stops a lot of those ills in society that we've seen, that, and to be honest, I've heard people that say they don't want to work in tech because they think it's too one way or too another or too something. The only way to fix that in any company is from the inside out. We have to have representation in the ranks to make sure that it works for all of us.
And that representation, are you including also leadership roles and being at the forefront of tech and entrepreneurship?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's been study after study after study that have proven companies do significantly better when they have female leadership. There was one that said, matter of fact, there's a couple of the big finance guys that won't even take a company public if they don't have a female on the board because they know that the companies do better. And so if they don't have a female on the board, they'll bring one. And then there was studies after that said, well, having one female on the board really isn't enough because it's a lone voice. You really need three women on the board so that it's not a lone voice. And so that, helps. And think about it this way. So I'll give you a great example. I posted this thing on LinkedIn a couple of years ago that was talking about diversity. And this guy jumped in and said, why do you care about diversity? Just hire the best person for the job and let diversity fall where it may. I said, okay, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever lost your car keys? He said, yeah. I said, have you ever asked where they are? And she walked right up to him and picked them up and handed them to you. He said, well, yeah. I said, that's what diversity gets you. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different approach to a problem. And it comes up with different solutions. So if you really are committed to embracing diversity and having those benefits, then don't take the lazy way out. Don't say, well, we tried, we couldn't find a female, so we just quit. Pay a relocation fee. Do what it takes, but it honestly takes all of those people. Anybody that is in a relationship will tell you their partner, whether it's the same sex or a different sex, is going to think about things differently, right? So it's having all of those opinions and making sure, again, that technology works for us. We're not slaves to technology.
Yeah, great point. So you do a lot of international speaking engagements. Do you see cultural and regional differences influencing the challenges and opportunities faced by women entrepreneurs?
100%. 100%. For all the talk there is in some countries about how awful it is, there are countries where it's definitely worse. There are countries where women are not allowed to go to school.
Yeah.
Right. So, all of those cultural differences, to be honest, that's one of my favorite things about my whole career is learning about cultural differences. Right. I have extended family all over the globe that just mean the absolute world to me that I would not know otherwise, all from very different cultures. And you have to realize there's a component to this that really is damaging to us too, right? So if you go to another country, what do they think of America? They think we are what they see on CNN because it's a 24-hour news blast to them. And they think that's all we are. We all run around with guns and shoot each other. And then you go to another country and your opinion of that country is what you learned in high school or elementary school. Or I've been to countries that didn't even exist when I learned about countries, Czechoslovakia, that people woke up one morning and they were in two different countries.
Yes.
Because the government just decided they couldn't agree. So they split.
Right.
All of those things are super, super interesting, but there are cultures, I think, that are more supportive of women than the U.S. Certainly some of the smaller countries, but we're kind of struggling with that. And to be fair, it's really only been since the 60s and 70s that women are in the workforce in a more full-time basis than they were before. Right. And so a lot of these career opportunities are just sort of opening up to women. But yeah, it's absolutely different all over the globe. And I will tell you that prejudice exists all over the globe. It's just in different forms, but yeah, it's really crazy how, as diverse as this planet is, how much we are alike in a lot of things. But yes, there's definitely countries where women have it a lot better than others, for sure.
Okay. So the Only Women Entrepreneurs community building aspect is crucial. Could you share a success story where collaboration within a community led to a remarkable growth for a woman-owned business?
Oh, absolutely. So there is a woman that started a cabling business in this industry and started out with a few techs, and now she manages their company does work on 4 continents, I believe.
Wow.
And all of that worked because of networking with other women and other people being a sponsor and putting that name forward and helping build that roster. But there's no way you can build a company by yourself. You need people to refer employees to you. You need people to help bring people to the table, to do everything for you, all your systems, all your everything, cleaning your office space, all of that. So, I'm nothing without my network. There is no woman that's made a success of herself that's anything without her network. And most of us will tell you that.
Okay. So lastly, what message would you like to convey to female entrepreneurs who might be listening to the podcast, eager to make their mark in the business world?
Do it.
Just do it. Don't hesitate.
No, seriously, if you have a great idea, you might be ahead of the times. You might be behind the times. Years ago, I wrote this program called Grocer Easy.
Right.
And the premise behind the program was it came with a barcode scanner. So as you use groceries, you scanned it with a barcode. Okay. You set up your grocery store and aisle order. So it would spit out your grocery list as you walk through the grocery store, whatever that pattern is. So you wouldn't forget things. You wouldn't have to go back. You could send your grocery list to the grocery store. They would fulfill it for you, and you could drive around and pick it up. You could have your prescriptions fulfilled for you, and you could drive around and pick those up. You could have them pick out greeting cards and all that. When I went to the grocery store business, they said, nobody is ever going to let you buy their groceries. Nobody is ever going to let you have a drive-through pharmacy because of privacy laws. There's no way we can get around that. And so all of that work went to absolute crap. And look where we are today. You can drive up and pick up your groceries. You can drive up and pick up your pharmacy. It was completely before its time. Now, had I had a ton more money, I probably could have gone around and made a bigger impact with that. But the point was, it introduced those concepts. And whether they bought my program or not, I gave that program to a whole bunch of people that were on chemo to give to their caregivers,
right,
so that they could help me debug the program and also get all their groceries. So it made a difference anyway. It's kind of a different difference and probably not the best payout, but it got used for a long time just for that purpose. So even if it's not your intended purpose, something can come around and it can be a better thing, but just do that. But don't have the expectation that you're going to be successful day one. You're going to have to work for that. You're going to have to work your ass off for that. And don't expect that whatever your thought process was is not going to change. Because if you don't give yourself that grace to grow and learn and fail up, then you're constantly going to be at a battle with yourself, and then it's not going to be successful. So, if you have a screw up, if something doesn't work, do a little postmortem, figure out what went wrong, move on to the next thing. Don't dwell in the past. It's not, you can't see in front of you if you're looking in the rearview mirror anyway. So just do it and keep going for it. But absolutely seek out help and advice. Most states have a incubator program that's part of a state because it helps attract business into the state. Reach out to those incubators. It's free help. It's people that are retired business people that have made a name for themselves that will help you.
Wow. Carrie, I want to say thank you so much. I'm forever grateful that you took the time to come and speak with us on the show, and we made this connection. I learned a lot in this past hour. I wanted to invite you probably to come back for another show, and then we can focus on your second book, Educator's Reference for Data Center Education.
Sure.
And discuss any other issues that we kind of just brushed upon, but I probably want to dig a little deeper and be a little bit more descriptive. In the meantime, if our listeners would like to buy your books or reach out to you with any questions regarding career opportunities in data centers, can you please tell them where they can find you?
So you can find me at CarrieGoetz.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. The book is available at Amazon. It's also on Audible. It's also on Kindle, and it's available in Barnes and Noble, which I think opens up to a whole bunch of other folks. So we are very actively working on sponsors to buy books and put them in the hands of students in the different trades. So if you own a construction company, if you're in a construction firm, if you're in a tech firm, and you can sponsor 30 books for students in a class just to introduce data center concepts, please reach out. If you are new in the industry, mentor, you have questions, reach out. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. So I just want to say thank you to our audience for listening to the show. I hope you found the information we discussed today useful and has you thinking about a career in data centers. We need your help in getting the message out there, so please share this episode with others. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on the next show. If you have any questions or need information, I encourage you to reach out to me on Instagram, #OnlyWomenEntrepreneurs, or go to my website, onlywomenentrepreneurs.com, and book your free consultation directly with me. I would love to have the opportunity to help guide you in an alternative career.
Thank you so much for having me.